Hello, this is Amass Games, and this is a game called Rival Kings. It's a small box, and it's by Hutch or Hooch. First game I think I managed to get by these guys, and thought I'd show you what it's all about. It's a game in multiple languages, which is obviously useful considering it's a huge pack. I think it's about 7 languages at least. This reference is quite handy. I might actually just leave it it's available to the side just so you're aware. And I might leave this just in shot as well, just so you're aware of obviously what we're doing. Now, I have elasticated this, and the reason being is it's quite handy to keep them separate. Box, some space left over. We don't need that right now. It's basically a medieval game, and it's a simultaneous action sequence game where you're trying to collect villages and basically different buildings in the villages for the people that go with them. So the different types of cards. Firstly, you choose a colour. So these are basically conflict markers, which I'll come on to. I'm going to choose lavender or purple again, and there should be 2 of every colour. So it's a 2 to 4 player game. Takes about 20 to 30 minutes, and I'll come on to what those do in a second. So you'll start off with these cards initially. These are basically cards which represent your position in the keep, in the castle. So the premise is the king is dead, long live the king. And the point is basically you're representing the regality and you're trying to do stuff. So for example, you're the princess and you're commanding something to happen. Or you've got various other positions as well. So there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 12 cards which represent who basically is in power, and obviously what's happened is those have ended up in here, it seems. So just make sure they're all on here. These should all be 1s. The reason you keep 1s separately is they represent a different kind of building. If you've played a game called Port Royal, which I'll be doing a video for as well, what you'll see is the backs of the cards represent money, which isn't used actually for scoring. But I'll explain how these work. So everybody will be given 3 cards. So I'll say I've got these 3 and somebody else has been given those 3. What you're doing is you're going to choose to play a card. Now, the card you play is important because if somebody plays a card that comes into conflict with it, conflict markers get handed out. So depends on what you want to do. Do you want to get some money? Do you want to buy a person? Do you want to buy a building? Or do you want to get rid of your conflict? There are more options the higher up you are, so F is the best. Having said that, you're more likely to someone to have in conflict with you. This symbol here is on some of the cards, and it's only on one of each basically rank. And what happens if 2 people have, say, the same value, if you have that, then you basically trump them. So then you're giving them conflict. So let's say they've played that and they've played this. This is an example where conflict will be happening. A will be going first. What they'll be doing is saying, does anybody else have D? They do. What they do is they give them conflict. Everyone starts off with 1 as well at the beginning. So let's just do it like that. Then they can take this and basically cover over one of their crests, which means they get to do one of their abilities. Now, they don't need to maybe buy an extra person at this point, so they cover it like this. I'm just going to now, so that's just the overview of what's happening. Now I'll just show you how the cards are set up. So you're going to have a deck of 1s, a deck of 2s, but initially you're going to have 2 buildings out basically. So it's a total of 8 and 8. We'll leave those out just as an example. You also are going to be putting cash out underneath at the bottom as well. So put some cash out down here. And you're basically encouraging people to be basically buying stuff. You're then putting out buildings. So that was just done randomly. So imagine we've got some cash down here. Everybody starts off with 5 cash as well. So just say, I'll represent one of the players. That goes there, this goes here. The game ends when one of these stacks runs out. So I said it's going to have a stack of 8. So what they're doing is they've got some cash. They're going first because they're A. They can buy somebody. But because they chose to cover over someone's crown, so they chose to cover this, they can get money first. So they take it from one of the piles. They take it from this pile, say, and suddenly they're revealing this. which incentivizes the next player maybe to take the cash instead, but because they want to take their ability, they can't get any more cash. So now they've got 6, so they can buy one person. They look along here and see who they want to buy. Now the aim of the game is to try and get as many points as possible. To get the most points, you're looking to get the same colour building and worker, and ideally you want a perfect pair. Now a perfect pair is when you're matching their symbol with the place they work at, basically. So if I look through here just to see if he is in here, of course he could be in one of the cards already. So we're looking for blue, and there it is. No, that's the other one. There it is. So he is, beer, maybe, I don't know, he's a barman and he works in a tavern. So what you want to be doing is ideally getting both those cards. There are cards that let you swap cards around, but as soon as you've got a perfect pair, it cannot be stolen. At the end of the game, you'll be scoring 5 points in this instance because you score both of the cards. If you happen to have, at the end of the game, 2 blues, you basically score the highest of the 2. If you have something that you've got something left over, such as that and that, you'll just score 1 point for each. So that's how that works. In terms of collecting some of these cards, so there's no benefit on getting a building other than they're worth more points. But if you get a person, what you're able to do is use their ability. So from now on throughout the rest of the game, you can actually buy a person, which means you might not want to go for the princess in future. In this instance, you can give conflict to somebody else, and there are other options out here as well. Now, there is a guidebook which does tell you. Thankfully, it is quite self-explanatory, but the first time you look at it, you might be a bit daunted as to what's going on. Just take you to, quite handily, pretty much the centre page. You've got like the jailer, which means take 1 coin from the supply, and for each conflict marker you have, as long as there are coins left in the supply. So there are different things you can do to try and generate an engine. Finally, if you have any conflict markers at the end, you're going to lose 2 victory points as well. So that is Rival Kings. It's like I said, quite brief, kind of nice filler game that, yeah, including explanation, takes about 30 minutes. So that's an overview. There are obviously a number of games of its size. Unfortunately, I think the rulebook is handy to hand around to people to kind of see what buildings are out there. So I think compared to leaving it in a deck box, which I've produced in another video, I think it's best to actually keep it in the box it comes with. But as I cycle, and I like to keep an eye on the weight of things, having something of its size and mass, it's quite useful. The pieces are obviously a little fiddly to try and sort of dig out and grab. And yeah, I think elasticating the bands do make a lot of sense. Conflict, you can generate a lot of conflict, but it is very easy to get rid of it. And plenty of the cards do have them. I talked about swapping buildings. You can also swap people as well. So if someone's about to nick your building, you either want to try and complete it, or maybe consider taking that card off them as well. It does take slightly longer in a 2-player game because you're not going through the deck as fast. And what you might want to consider doing is going for what they recommend is playing it maybe 3 times if you're playing it with, say, a full complement of 4 players, just because the game can be over that quickly. That's about it, really. It's quite a nice light theme. Santo Domingo, which is also in the Port Royal universe, plays very similarly, about simultaneous action sequences. Other games such as Citadels obviously work the same way. But having said that, you're taking, there's less about what's on the card and more about what you're trying to focus on with the buildings you're getting, and more specifically the actions of the people. The fact that there's nothing going on with the buildings, I don't know if that's a negative. I think there's more of a focus to try and go for the people, which kind of makes sense because as much as buildings may have existed before the people, it feels natural to try and acquire people and bring them on board before you can then go to, I don't know, say a building to generate them. There are obviously multiple buildings of one colour, and there are in fact more than one types of symbol as well that we saw. So it all is quite easy and quick to pack away, whilst I filled in with a bit of blurb. So this is Rival Kings, and depending on how you're getting around, hopefully this won't be a burden in your carrying. So that is Rival Kings, and I'll see you again soon.